Tiffany A. Washington and Joy Hutton Lacey for your most important meal of the day.
1480 AM, KLVL, Pasadena, Houston, and 95.3 FM, KT37GS, Pasadena. The views and opinions expressed on KLVL 1480 talk programs are those of the host, guest, and callers, and are not necessarily those of this station, its owners, management, other hosts, or advertisers. Show topics on this station may include conversations on any lifestyle, belief, religion, political affiliation, or other personal practices. KLVL, a Synergy Broadcasting Company.
Tiffany A. Washington here, and we want to thank you for joining us on the Business Breakfast Talk Show, where we serve you your most important meal of the day.
That's right. We are serving success strategies and system side dishes every Saturday here on Synergy Radio 1480 AM.
So grab your coffee and your croissant and let's get down to business. So we're your Business Breakfast hosts. I'm Tiffany A. Washington.
And I am Joy Hutton Lacey. Last week, we talked about brand identity featuring special guest Amira Sain from Brunch and Slay. Today, we are going to focus on how to protect your brand. And later, Casey Handy Smith, an intellectual property and business law attorney, will be joining us. So, let's get right to it.
Yes, let's get to it. So there are several ways to protect your brand. And a lot of people may not even think about some of these ways that we protect our brands, but one of them is to protect your website content. Now, having a website for some people is a big deal, and for others it's not quite a big deal. But what we want to make sure of is that we protect our logo and we protect our name. But you also have to protect the content on your website, right, Joy?
Absolutely, absolutely. And not only that, that comes with more details about IP protection or intellectual property protection. And what that looks like is trademarks, copyrights, patents, and we'll cover more about this later. But you know, you have to create a unique brand name starting off. Unique names instead of kind of generic names are likely to have a stronger protection because sometimes the generic names will get denied because it's more of a common name.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I would also say that you want a name that is going to withstand the test of time, because oftentimes people choose names that are really trendy right now but may not be something that is appropriate for 2 or 3 years down the line. So you can't have names like On Fleek Shoes or whatever it is. And I'm sure the kids aren't saying that anymore, right?
Yeah, I don't know what they're saying.
I don't know what the new saying is, but you can't use those particular terms in order to put on your business if you want to be taken seriously, one, and then two, if you really want to get it branded and have it to be something that lasts a lifetime. But I wanted to share a resource about that. Okay. There is a resource, and it's called businessgenerator.com. And on businessgenerator.com, if you want to get some ideas flowing when it comes to choosing your business name, then I want you to head over to that website, businessnamegenerator.com, and plug in some keywords. This cool app will help you to figure out what your business name is, and it'll help you mix and match some of those keywords so that you can find it. And it's a free resource.
Cool.
Yeah.
And so once you create that name, of course, you need to register your trademark and your logo because it's important, like we said, to protect your brand.
Right.
And sometimes, you know, if you aren't able to do it on your own, it's good to get an attorney involved in that process. And we'll talk more about that later.
Yes, because we actually have a guest coming on, right?
Yes, Casey
an actual
Handy
attorney.
Smith.
Yes, and that attorney, she is going to give us our business life today.
Absolutely.
And our legal life, if you will.
Exactly.
Because the thing about it is sometimes we start a business, and when we start that business, we just go all in, and we don't think about the small things that might come to haunt us later.
Right.
So I think this is a very important topic. So if you haven't already shared, just to plug, go ahead and get on our Facebook page. We just opened it up, you guys.
Yes.
On our Facebook page, Business Breakfast Talk Show.
Yes.
And you can catch Joy and I there streaming live. And if you're listening in on the airwaves, thank you so much for listening. You can give us a call at 832-230-5592. So, back to the matter at hand.
Yes, protecting your brand.
Protecting your brand.
So some of the things that people don't think about when they are starting a business, some things, that are related to human resources tie into your brand. So creating an employee handbook, for example.
Yes.
Because when you have your brand out there, your employees, one, need to respect the name.
Absolutely.
Put some respect on my name.
Yes, indeed.
But they need to respect the name. They need to respect your brand. And you have to protect yourself from the misuse of your brand.
Right.
Because, whether that's how your employees wear your brand, how they're using it on materials, where to use it. There are certain things, certain formats for letterhead, for website, for all those different things. And so you want to make sure that your employees understand the importance of that.
So, Joy, have you, in your experience, had to go back to the handbook about what it says about the use of the name or of the brand of the logo? And if so, can you give us
Absolutely. An example? Some people want to add their own creativity to your logo. And I'm like, but wait, that's my name.
Right.
You can't put your twist on it. I didn't ask you to add, a little pink and blue for this holiday or whatever.
Right.
It's black and white and yellow if I choose.
Right.
But yeah, I have had to address that with people because it's like, please, this is my brand. I have to maintain that brand integrity and, maintain that consistency.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think people don't understand that your brand is more than just it's more than just a logo.
Right.
It's a representation of you. And if you're serious about your brand, you've chosen a logo that represents your personality. It represents how you want people to feel when they look at your logo.
Absolutely.
So the logo is almost like the face, but then when you open that logo up, you're behind that logo, right? And so you want to have brand recognition as far as your logo is concerned, but it's all a representation of you. So if it's off, or if people print fuzzy images of it, for example, or if they do something to distort that particular image, then that is a misrepresentation.
Right, absolutely.
Yeah.
And not only that, if someone is misusing your brand in a public space, that can hurt you.
Absolutely.
That can hurt your brand reputation. So you have to be very careful about that. And that segues into our next point about monitoring your brand.
Yeah.
If you can track online if someone is using your brand name, and this is important because if they are using your brand name, we'll talk about what to do about that later with our attorney.
Yes.
But some things, there are Google alerts and there are other trackers online where you can get alerts when people are using your name.
Right. One thing I think we didn't talk about was the patent.
Yes.
Yes. So with the patent, if you have an innovative or revolutionary product, you want to be sure to secure a patent for it.
Absolutely.
Inventors this is where you all come in. So anyone who's invented a product, you want to make sure that you get a patent for it.
Right.
And from what I understand, the patent process is a difficult one.
It's a long one,
too.
It's
a long
and
one.
And expensive.
All of that, right?
All of the above.
Get your coins together.
Yes.
And get your time together as well.
Absolutely.
And I think that's one of the main reasons you want to make sure that someone other than just yourself is looking over it, unless you're a patent attorney, of course. You want to have legal looking over that particular piece.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And then thinking about, so we have trademarks, copyrights, patents, all of those things to think about. And for patents, too, I don't think people think about the types of products you can patent.
Right.
There are certain software applications. There are hair products.
Yes.
There are a lot of people out there that have hair products, but a lot of people don't have a patent on them.
Right.
And these are unique, so wouldn't you want to protect that?
Right. So for all of those ladies and gentlemen out there who are creating products at home in your kitchen, mixing up different elixirs to put, for men, I know there are some men out there who do
have the grooming lines
and do different special stuff for their beards, and women who have different hair products that they like to mix together. Those are things, if people start asking you for it, for one, you're going to want to start getting yourself protected legally for those pieces because you've put your heart and soul into it, and you want to make sure that it's not something that someone can come and swoop away from you.
Absolutely. And when also thinking about protecting your brand, you obviously you're starting in the U.S. If you're here in the U.S., that's a good start. But if you are thinking about taking your product or services to the next level, your brand to the next level, you have to start thinking globally too, and looking at what the laws are in respect to those countries so that you can protect your brand. Absolutely.
And so that's not a small task. That's not something that you can really do on your own. So you definitely need to have some backup in that particular place. And that goes back to the branding piece, though, with making sure that your brand is something that lasts and stands the test of time. Something that's classic, something that says it's going to be here much longer than the creator.
Right.
I mean, yourself is going to be here. Yeah.
Absolutely. Okay, well, if you are tuning in live, please ask us questions on Facebook or call us at 832-230-5592. And don't forget to share the video as well as like our page, Business Breakfast Talk Show.
All right, so we will be right back.
Yeah.
You're listening to Synergy Radio 1480.
This is Jolanda Jones from I'ma Tell It. When you're not able to watch us live on your mobile device, be sure to stay connected to Synergy Radio 1480 anywhere in Houston, in your house, in your office, or in your car by tuning into 1480 AM. Synergy Radio Network, where it all comes together.
And over again. It needs to be said morning, noon, and night. In fact, it needs to be said during all your times of being awake and even while you're sleeping, because most people stop themselves from living their dreams. It's usually not something external, but it's something.
In the past year, KYND became one of the fastest growing radio stations in the country. Well, we've outgrown our old home, and we're ready to take it to the next level.
We are now Synergy Radio.
More power.
All day, all night.
Wait, what?
Synergy Radio 1480, powered 24/7.
Can I tell you how excited we are?
We are powerful talk that inspires change.
That's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do.
With transformational coaches ready to help you get to the next level.
You will find some things that speak to your soul.
Synergy Radio 1480 will continue to bring you all the voices you know and love.
Gotta have you here on the Yolanda Adams Morning Show.
This is Rashawn McDonald.
Welcome to the journey with Tiffany Smith.
Hello, my name is Les Brown.
I'm Paris Ely.
We're your hosts, Tristan and Cece.
This is Oscar Hines.
Hey, it's Zakia Larry Live.
This is Nicole R. Coleman.
Hey, and I'm Tasha Evans.
This is the reality check, Dr. D. Yvonne Young.
Welcome back to the show. I'd like to shout out our live studio audience once again.
And now, back to the show.
Thanks for cueing us in.
And we're back. We missed our cue, clearly. But we started talking about ways to protect your brand. But soon we are going to be joined here by Casey Handy Smith, who will tell you specifically what steps you need to protect your brand. So, Tiffany. Good morning, girl.
Good morning.
It's been a rough morning.
Yeah.
But we're here, and we're so glad to be here. We've talked about, as I said, a number of ways to protect your brand. What are some of the first things that you did to protect your brand, and how did you know what to do?
One of the first things that I did was figure out what type of contracts I needed. So in my business, Transformation 7, I do a lot of speaking, public speaking, keynote speaking, trainings, workshops, all of that good stuff. And so when I go out to meet with potential customers, what I want to make sure of is that I have something in writing about the services that I will provide, what they should expect from me, what my fee is, all of those things, and all of that is inside of a speaker's contract. So I have a speaker's contract, and then I also have a do not compete. And though I haven't necessarily used it yet, one of the things about the do not compete, it's also known as a DNC, is for you, when you start hiring on employees and you want to make sure that they're not not infringing upon your work.
Exactly, and it's not a conflict of interest.
It is not a conflict of interest, right? So, and then, of course, the LLC, which is the way that you protect your brand beyond a DBA. So, beyond a doing business as, you want to make sure that you register your name, because sometimes you might be using a name that's already in use,
right?
And you want to make sure that you are legit when you are in front of others. So, I think those are 3 of the main steps that I took to protect my brand.
Right. Yeah, I know with mine, Joy of Consulting, I was like, are there any other Joy of Consultings out there? So, I did a search, and Casey will probably speak to this as well, about doing a free basic trademark search to make sure that your name is not being used.
Right.
Because you can Google it, but someone may have that trademark registered.
Right.
And so you have to make sure that your name is not used, because then someone can come after you if you're using their name. So I definitely did a search to make sure that I was, unique in my brand, even though I was like Joy Consulting. It just makes sense.
It does
Joy
make
of Consulting.
sense.
So, so I made sure to file a trademark. And you mentioned something about an LLC,
Right.
and so it's definitely important to protect yourself legally as well, because, we talked about this in one of our episodes about people just setting up a DBA and tying everything to their social security number.
Right.
Well, you have to have those legal entities set up to protect you. So that was one of the things that I did as well. And so doing that, making sure my name was unique, and making sure that I protected that name were 2 of the main things that I did initially.
And I also thought about something as you were speaking. Things like an employee identification number. You might need that in some cases, especially if you're trying to get contracts, because that's another arm of my business as well, as far as educational consulting is concerned. So whenever I go into schools and things of that nature, or try to vet myself for a contract, they want that employee identification number as well. And that's a whole separate set of information that you kind of have to fill out. So you want to make sure that you are always on the up and up with all of those legal elements, and always do your research too.
Absolutely.
On what different business entities are going to want and need from you, because those are the things that can be pitfalls to businesses if you aren't prepared. Also, we talked about the licensure of your name, if you will, and the trademarking of your name. And you said something about doing a Google search. Now, one of the things I want to tell our listening audience is that when you do a Google search, as Joy said, it's not going to pull up everything. But also, if you try to put it in as a URL, even if you can purchase a URL for your business name, that doesn't mean
that it's your name.
Exactly. And I wanted to say that because I was in a state of naivety when that happened to me, where I was just like, oh, nobody has the www, so I can use this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it's like, name taken.
Yeah, name taken. Yeah. But then also, when you do figure it out, you want to make sure that you purchase all of those URLs. So .org, .com, .code. Yes, all of that.
Because somebody can go back and get those.
Exactly. So you just want to, and they're so inexpensive that it's worth it just to grab all of them. Even if you don't use them, you may not use one for years.
Exactly.
But at least you'll have it.
Exactly. And so it's very important to do your research when starting a business so you know how to protect yourself.
Right.
I found an article on entrepreneur.com, and I'm getting excited
All right,
because
do your
research. It talks about how to brand yourself Oprah style.
Oh my goodness.
And I love it. I love her, all things Oprah. I'm so in love with her. So I'm sure you're all wondering, how do I do it like Oprah?
Right.
And as we've discussed, there are more ways to protect yourself than simply to register your trademark. If you think about it, how many Oprahs do you know?
I only know one Oprah.
Right. I only know
and
one.
she's
too.
fabulous.
Exactly. And if you do know any others, how many are household names? So, Oprah not only made a name for herself, but she trademarked her name.
Yeah.
And this also became her brand.
Yes.
So trademarking your name, too, also makes you unique. So Tiffany A. Washington, Joy Hutton Lacey, trademarking your name, buying that domain for your personal name, because you have your personal brand and you have your professional brand.
Right.
Definitely thinking about those things.
Now, I'm so glad that we're talking about Oprah, because she's the top female producing person in her lane, and I really love that about her. And one of the things that she made sure that she did was with all of her pieces, like even with OWN, Oprah Winfrey Network.
Yes.
I mean, it just made sense for her.
Exactly.
It's like these doors and these paths were just open for Oprah.
Right.
Right?
Exactly.
But because of that, we know that there's certain quality programming on her show now. So all of those things go back, even though we're talking about the legality of it all. Under the legality falls all of the elements of your business.
Right.
And they have to be on point.
Right, and brand consistency.
Yeah.
And so what Oprah did, when you talked about OWN, her network, she used the common thread technique.
Yeah.
And what that is
that.
basically tying everything to kind of your name. So you have O Magazine, Harpo Studios, which for those of you who haven't thought about it, it is Oprah spelled backwards.
Yes.
And OWN Network. So by keeping her brand consistent, it's more recognizable and memorable to the public.
Yeah. Now, I'm glad you said Harpo Network, because you remember, you know where I'm going with this. The Color Purple.
Yes.
That is one of my favorite movies, y'all. And we all know her favorite line. Well, our favorite line from that movie.
Right.
And it can be a little offensive, so I'm not going to say it. However, her husband's name was Harpo in the movie.
Yes.
Right? And so how is that for branding?
Right.
How is that for really making sure that your name is out there? Because I know last week we talked about branding. So the fact that she was able to be such a power player that she said, no, my name is going to be in here forwards and backwards inside of this movie.
Right.
I think that is just brilliant, right?
Yes.
Because now, if people say it all the time and they know what Harpo is.
Oh, yeah. You definitely know.
Absolutely.
You definitely know.
Yeah.
And so we talked about, just the importance of protecting that name, protecting that brand. And so we kind of touched on, Googling your name or setting up Google alerts. But if someone is using your name, and Casey will speak to this, you can send them a cease and desist letter.
Yes.
And basically what that does is put them on notice, and you need to stop using my name.
Right, exactly.
Right now. Today.
Yes.
So
because if you really intend on making sure that your brand reaches the masses, then you absolutely have to make sure that you're on the up and up with what's going on in the internet world.
Right.
Because people steal identities every day.
Exactly.
And they will steal your business identity in a quick second.
Right.
There's a story about a young woman who hired an intern, and she allowed this intern into all parts of her business.
Right.
And in the midst of doing that, the intern got a hold of her secret documents, if you will, the ones that she used to lay the foundation of her business, all of her business plans and all of that good stuff. And so what ended up happening was that intern then turned around and used that same infrastructure and framework
wow.
for their own business.
Right.
So there was a complete duplicate, a complete copycat.
Right.
And one of the things that I wanted to share with the audience is that you have to be careful with your brand.
Right.
Now, how did she protect herself legally? That part was unknown, but she was clearly upset about it and couldn't do a whole lot about it.
Well, she probably didn't have a non-disclosure. You know, she probably didn't have any agreements in place that protected that proprietary information. And people don't think about that. You're just thinking, I need somebody to help me. You get caught up in all of the work and you don't think about, like you said, the legal aspect of it. And people need to sign agreements so that you can have your intellectual property protected.
Right.
Because that happens to so many people.
Yeah.
I hear that all the time.
And what a sad story.
Yeah.
Because now this woman, who knows whether or not the intern's business did as well as the actual employer's business. But at the same time, why would you go through that? You know, just protect yourself. So that's why we're here.
Right.
We're here to help you to understand.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Oh, I think it's great information. And if Oprah inspires you, then commit to following her lead and protecting your brand.
So we're all on our path to Oprah.
Yes.
I will tell you, we are all on our path. And the reason why is because not because she's so great. I think she's great, but at the same time, she's a great model and example of how we should run our businesses if we want to scale. If we want to make more than just a few $1,000s a year and we want to start to scale, then she's definitely a great case study to abide by.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So if you're tuning in live, we want you to ask us some questions on Facebook. So we are on Facebook. Join us at the Business Breakfast Talk Show. And you can also join us on Synergy Live, Synergy Facebook page, and we'll be live there as well. So don't forget to call in. You can call in at 832-230-5592. We'll see you right back here with our guest, Joy, and our guest is going to be Casey Handy Smith, and she's going to be giving us some law facts when we return.
All right.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen out there in the greater Houston area, this is your boy Stevie Ray, and you are listening to Synergy 14.
1480 will continue to bring you all the voices you know and love. Are you ready for talk that inspires change?
All right, and we are back. For those of you just joining us, we're talking about how to protect your brand, and we're here in the studio with Casey Handy Smith, intellectual property and business attorney. Welcome, welcome, welcome.
Yes, Casey, thank you so much for being here. Tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we'll jump right into the juicy stuff.
Okay. Well, good morning, ladies. Thank you so much for having me on. As you mentioned, my name is Casey Handy Smith. I am an attorney here in Houston, originally from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay.
Yes, exactly. And I help entrepreneurs, creatives, and entertainers who struggle with knowing how to legally protect their growing brands. My background is in music business, where I was initially introduced to copyright law and the importance of protecting music copyrights. And so from there, I had the opportunity to work with various law firms and companies where I learned more about different areas of intellectual property, such as trademarks, patents, trade secrets. And so I just really fell in love with the subject matter and just the whole idea of being able to actually own the things that you create, because it's not always very common, especially in our community. We always seem to be on the creating and the creative side, but not so much on the side of ownership. And so that's kind of what I'm here to do, is help people within our community be able to own and leverage their creativity.
Absolutely.
I love that.
So what are some of the common misconceptions and mistakes that you see when it comes to protecting a brand?
One of the biggest mistakes I see is waiting too late. I think a lot of businesses or a lot of brands, when they're first starting, they think, I'm small, no one's really paying attention to me, it's not a big deal if I don't, start taking steps now to protect myself. And, people tend to be very retroactive or reactive, as opposed to proactive when it comes to a lot of legal matters. And there's this idea where, if I can't afford to do everything, then I shouldn't do anything. And that's really putting yourself in a tough spot from the beginning, because there are ways that you can start protecting your brand now, even if you don't have a huge budget, to go about doing formal registrations and hiring, someone to write full-length formal contracts for you. There are ways that you can start protecting yourself from the beginning.
So what would be those nuggets, those little pieces? If I'm a new business owner, I'm on a shoestring budget, and I'm really trying to bootstrap it, because we talk about bootstrapping a lot, because a lot of our listeners are new to business. So what would be some of the key things that you would say we need to move forward with as far as protecting our business legally?
So one thing that's really pretty easy to do, and a lot of people just kind of overlook it, is making sure that you're very clear on terms that you have when you enter into these different arrangements with people you may be working with in business. And it can be something as simple as an email where you just lay out all the terms that you all have spoken about, and make sure you wrap it up with a nice, okay, and you agree to this. Like you understand that this is what we talked about, and this is what, and just kind of laying everything out, because I see so many entrepreneurs who are, you're moving fast, opportunities are coming, so you're constantly having to act quick, and just kind of forgetting that, you need to slow down sometimes and just make sure that you're clear in terms of what the terms are, because, although it may not be a 20-page legal document, it is something to at least have in writing, an email or some kind of, short form or whatever, just to have someone kind of, sign off and agree to these specific terms that you've already kind of discussed. Another, I guess, way to kind of protect yourself when you're just starting is to include copyright symbols on content that you're creating, because with copyrights, you don't have to legally or formally register to actually own the copyright. So anything that you're creating, like your website, digital products, just about anything that you're creating, you can go ahead and use, I know we've all seen the C symbol.
Yes.
Yeah, the little C.
Yeah.
So you can go ahead and start kind of plugging that on things just to kind of put people on notice that this, is something that relates to your brand. Exactly.
Right.
This is mine.
All mine.
So don't don't try it. Like, this is mine.
Right.
You have your business name next to it to just kind of really put people on notice. And same goes with trademarking. So say your business name or logo or something like that you want to protect, you can start using the TM symbol prior to registration.
Right.
Okay.
And then you use the R after registration.
Yes.
Right, exactly.
Okay.
So with the TM symbol, I just want our listeners and our viewers to understand that you can put those things next to your name, especially if you intend on registering your logo as a trademark, your logo
and name.
Yes. So you can put TM next to it.
You can.
Right?
You can. And then, of course, there are some nuances in terms of, what phrases and words can actually receive federal registration. So just because you start throwing a TM on everything, don't think that you're going to be able to necessarily actually get that, federally registered. Yeah.
Now, I want to be clear because I don't want people to go out there and start attacking others for using their name and they only have the TM, they don't have the R. So can you do that? Can I go to somebody else who might have the same business name as me and say, no, I got TM by my name. You need to stop using
it's really
respect on my name.
Right, literally. Right? I heard you have some real issues. But it really comes back to kind of the first in time, first in use. So by you doing the TM, it's just putting people on notice. So if you can kind of document and trace back and show that, like, okay, I've already been using this name for a considerable amount of time. You've seen it out here on my different branding. They should have been on notice because I utilize that that symbol as well. And so it just kind of gives you a little bit to work with.
Right. So in talking about that, we briefly mentioned the cease and desist letter earlier. Can you talk a little bit about that? And then also, when can someone lose rights to their name or to their mark at any point?
Okay, so cease and desist letters are just generally, letters you'd send to someone if you find out or you feel that they're infringing on trademark, copyright, any form of property, not just IP. But and you said, at what point can you lose your mark? So it is very important that you are constantly monitoring your mark, because that's another kind of mistake I see pretty common. Is people will file a trademark application, but they won't monitor the process A, which is always a big problem, because if you don't monitor the process, it can end up being abandoned, and then you'd be back again at the beginning of the process, having to pay all the fees over again. But even more so than that, even if you receive federal registration, the trademark office doesn't monitor your mark for you. So it's not up to them to find out that someone's infringing. If someone tries to file an application with their office, then at that point, they're kind of on the side of protecting you from that stance. But in terms of, someone just using your business name or other branded material, it's 100% up to you to be monitoring those things and sending, cease and desist, any different letters or whatever to protect, because you absolutely can lose a mark if you don't protect it.
Yeah. What about with social media? Because it gets really tricky in social media with people using hashtags and reserving the handles and all of that. Like, what about in that space?
In terms of when you could send, I guess, a cease and desist. So it really would depend on the way that they're using it. If they're trying to use your handles or your hashtags to promote something that they are doing in the commercial space, then that's when you would get into an issue of infringement. If they're just kind of hashtagging, like, casually, not in connection with any kind of goods or service or, trying to sell anything, then you're not really looking at infringement so much. So say you have followers who are kind of trying to promote your brand and they're using your hashtag in that way, then that's fine. But it's when you start seeing people with your exact same Instagram name page. I mean, I've literally had clients who have they'll have IG accounts and someone would have literally taken basically their whole account and they have like similar like products and everything that they're pushing through their page. So that's when it's obviously a lot more glaring.
Yeah,
it's like,
that's the problem.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think it's important to note that there is a difference between someone like stealing your work and completely duplicating it versus someone who has some similar nuances.
Right.
Because there are so many companies that do the same thing.
Yeah.
But you do have to keep that lookout like we were talking about. I wanted to take a minute before we moved on. We have some Facebook folks that are talking to us, and I wanted to shout them out real quick. So Candace Beamer Fleming. Candace says, this is so timely for me today. Thank you, ladies. So, Miss Casey Handy Smith, we thank you for being here today because she said this is some timely information. And Thesha is telling us good morning. So, good morning, Thesha. We just wanted to take a minute to shout out a couple of the people who've been watching with us this morning. And remember to invite your friends over to the Business Breakfast Talk Show because we're currently having breakfast right now with Miss Casey Handy Smith. So, Casey, I have a question for you. Can you touch on some of the specific steps that we need to protect our brand? And I'm going to ask you a little bit more about that question when we come back because it's time for a break. If you haven't joined us by calling in, call us at 832-230-5592 and we will be right back.
All right.
Did you know that Shirley Ann's Black Collectibles and Flowers has one of the...
In the past year, KYND became one of the fastest growing radio stations in the country. Well, we've outgrown our old home, and we're ready to take it to the next level.
We are now Synergy Radio.
More power.
All day, all night.
Wait, what?
Synergy Radio 1480, powered 24/7.
Can I tell you how excited we are?
We are powerful talk that inspires change.
That's what you're supposed to do. That's what you're supposed to do.
With transformational coaches ready to help you get to the next level.
You will find some things that speak to your soul.
Synergy Radio 1480 will continue to bring you all the voices you know and love.
Got to have you here on the Yolanda Adams Morning Show.
This is Rushion McDonald.
Welcome to the journey with Tiffany Smith.
Hello, my name is Les Brown.
I'm Paris Ely.
We're your hosts, Tristan and Cece.
This is Oscar Hines.
Hey, it's Zakia Larry Live.
This is Nicole R. Coleman.
Hey, and I'm Tasha Evans.
This is the reality check, Dr. D. Yvonne Young.
Welcome back to the show. I'd like to shout out our live studio audience once again.
Tune in every day, 1480 a.m.
Are you ready for talk that inspires change?
Tune in to Synergy Radio 1480 in your car, in your house, or on any mobile device at synergyradionetwork.com.
That's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
This is Jolanda Jones from I'ma Tell It. When you're not able to watch us live on your mobile device, be sure to stay connected to Synergy Radio 1480 anywhere in Houston, in your house, in your office, or in your car by tuning in to 1480 AM. Synergy Radio Network, where it all comes together.
This breakfast talk show with our guest, Casey Handy Smith. Back to you, Tiffany.
All right, so a lot of people like to cut out the middleman or woman and do their work on their own. So tell me, Casey, what are some of the benefits of using an attorney to file their trademark and their intellectual property paperwork?
Well, the key benefit, and I think a lot of people don't even really realize this, especially with the trademark process, is it is actually a legal procedure. And so when you file the application, you get responses and documentation from an examining attorney who is assigned to your particular application. And when they respond to you, they're going to be, I mean, it's legal documentation. So, you know, of course you can navigate it yourself to a degree, but I mean it is generally just, you know, almost easier if you just have someone who already kind of understands the nuances of the law and knows how to respond to legal documentation. Another kind of key thing that's important is just again having someone who understands the nuances, because I can't tell you how often I deal with individuals who come to me after they've tried to use services like LegalZoom or something like that to file an application for them, and a lot of times, and I can't speak, you know, conclusively on LegalZoom. I'm not sure. They may have changed their practices, or they may have different levels that they offer depending on how much you pay. But generally what I'll see is, you know, they'll go to a service like that and they'll file the initial application for you, and that's the price you pay, but they don't do any of the follow-up throughout the remainder of the process. And so what happens is, because they don't do that follow-up, people don't even realize that there's additional things that have to be done after the initial application, and their application ends up getting abandoned, meaning you've spent, you know, all this money filing the application thinking that, you know, like, oh, hey, you know, they had it's going to get done, like, oh, it was a good price, you know, but in reality, that price only covered their work to file the initial application, not to actually see you through the entire process.
Yeah, so I think that's a very good point that you brought up about LegalZoom, and there are so many other companies out there like that where you can get fast services that typically cost, you know, prices that we may not be able to immediately absorb, but there are certain things that you should spend your money on as far as your business is concerned. So when it comes to making sure that you take care of home, if you will, what are some of the things that you would say are most important for the seasoned business owner? We talked about the new one, but what about the seasoned business owner? What are some things that they should always make sure that they have in place?
Well, kind of the things that we've already touched on, you know, having contracts in place, non-disclosure agreements are really important. I work with a lot of entrepreneurs in the online space, and, you know, it's really popular to use a lot of these virtual assistants and people that you may not ever interface with. And so making sure you have the proper non-disclosures so that they are not taking any of your valuable trade secrets, you know, of your business, and trying to kind of leverage your brand for their own purposes. And so definitely making sure you have, you know, documentation in place. And like we've already kind of discussed, the intellectual property piece as well, making sure that you have your trademark registered, making sure that, you know, depending on the types of products that you're putting out, you know, making sure you have copyright registrations, you know, as well. And so it really, the same principles really apply, whether you're just starting or you're more seasoned, but it's just I guess a higher risk once you become more seasoned, because now you're a lot more visible. People are, you know, you have a higher chance of someone trying to kind of take what you've worked so hard to build.
Yes, absolutely.
We've talked a lot about trademarks. Can you explain the difference between, excuse me, a trademark, a copyright, and a patent?
Sure. So trademarks, since that's where we've kind of been digging our teeth into this morning, trademarks are essentially just kind of brand shortcuts or identifiers for consumers. It's, you know, a way for consumers to immediately identify certain services or goods and products, goods and services to a particular brand. So it would be like a name, logos, slogans. You know, whenever you see those golden arches, you know exactly what you're going to get. You know? There's no question about the type of service, the food. You know, so it helps consumers identify a particular goods or services. Copyrights, on the other hand, they protect original works of authorship that are fixed into some kind of tangible medium. So the important thing to always remember with copyrights is that ideas alone are never enough. So you can have a great idea, but until you actually fix it into something tangible, you're not going to be able to receive copyright protection. And examples of copyrights are, or things that would be protected by copyright, would be like music, other literary works, books,
curriculum of any sort for training courses.
Yeah.
So you can't copyright a thought, is what you're telling me. So if I think of something that's really great,
copyright.
Exactly.
But I see somebody else doing it, I can't go and say, "Hey, you stole my idea."
Exactly. Like just because you told your homegirl or whatever, and now she picks it up and runs with it. And if you don't have it tangibly placed into something, like you can't protect it. So and it's all kinds of things that can be protected by copyright. People don't even think about choreography, as long as it's recorded. And so and patents. So patents protect like inventions. So formulas generally, any types of manufacturing like processes, procedures, it's usually what get patent protection.
Okay.
How long does it take for a trademark generally when working with an attorney? Because we know we can run into problems in doing it on our own, but what would you say is the general timeline?
The general timeline can honestly go anywhere from 6 months to like 2 years
for a trademark.
Oh
wow!
Yeah, it varies because when you initially file the application, it's about 3 months before you even get a response back from the office at all.
Yes.
And I know, Joy, you have some experience
I'm like,
working
why
in
is it taking so long?
Yes, exactly. And so once they, so you'd have to wait on the initial, communication, and depending on what they say or, what issues there may have been with your mark, and the types of responses you have to follow up with, you may have to submit more, evidence and all of these things to kind of prove up your mark. So it can be an extensive process, and I think that's one of the things you have to kind of mentally prepare yourself for, is that it's not going to be an overnight thing to do. But
exactly. And what about copyright?
So copyright is generally not as long of a process. They're a little bit well, you can do it all online, but it definitely does not take as long. I would say it really depends on what you're trying to copyright to and kind of the volume of what you're trying to copyright, but generally not long, though, as trademarks.
Right.
So, okay.
What about the cost of both of those? How much does it cost to trademark something, and can I do it? Would you tell people to go it alone? And copywriting, how much does it cost, and would you tell people to go that alone?
Okay, so trademarking, we'll start there. Costs for trademarking can get to be pretty expensive because you can only do, I won't say you can only do an application per class. So trademarks have different classes. Like you can only protect your brand as it relates to certain goods and services. So just because you file a trademark application doesn't mean that you're going to be protected to use that mark in every industry for whatever you want to use it for, unless you actually file the application in that particular class. And so when you file, so the average cost, and so the average cost of a class, especially if you're doing like online, is about $275. And so, I mean, just think if you have 5 different classes that you want to get protection in, that's $275 times 5.
I want jewelry, I want clothes, I want pens, I want all this stuff.
I mean, and some categories are a little bit more broad, so you can, kind of throw in like clothing apparel, but like if you want to do, say, clothing apparel, and you have a podcast, and you have like, there's a lot of categories. So just
you have to file for each one.
File for each.
Yeah, so that's why we have Casey here, guys. So if you're listening in, if you're thinking about any of these things in your business, you don't want to go it alone. That's what I got from this conversation. Because the waters they sound like they're deep.
I would say for trademarks and patents especially, it is advised, I would say, especially if you don't want to really delve into that, because the USPTO, which is the United States Patent and Trademark Office, they do have a lot of really good information on their website. So if you have the time and you want to like really learn about that stuff, you can dig into their resources because they do provide, a lot of good information, but they cannot provide, legal advice on your specific brand or anything like that. So you have to keep that in mind. But so generally trademarks, patents, you definitely, if you can, get an attorney for those. Copyrights are a little bit easier, a little more straightforward, not as costly. Copyrights range anywhere from like $35 to like it can get costly, about $300 or so, but the average copyright is you're talking like $35 to file, and it's not as
So, of course, we would want them to hire you, Casey. But if they are not in Houston and cannot hire you, what are some questions that people should ask when they want to hire an intellectual property attorney?
Well, quick side note before I get into that, because copyright and trademark patent work is federal law, so I do work with clients all over the country.
Yes, there we go.
I do have quite a few clients who are not actually based in Houston,
good.
so just throwing that out there. But in terms of asking questions to ask, you definitely just want to be clear on how the process goes, how they work specifically in the process, and how they break down their fees, because I think people can get really confused, especially when we start talking about kind of flat rate services or fees, but just kind of seeing, how far that takes you in the process, because a lot of times it may not include, formal responses with the examining attorney in the trademark office. It may not include appeals. So you can run into situations where you're thinking you're going to be spending one price and then it ends up being, something astronomical. And then just asking them, I would say, their general thoughts on what it is that you're specifically trying to protect, because the last thing you want to do is start this process with trying to register something that's not very strong, or that's not even federally registerable. So you don't want to pay someone all this money just to
get denied.
Right. Well, I mean, and in some instances you can't. There's no way really for even for an experienced intellectual property attorney to know for sure. Can't 100% tell you like, oh, you're definitely gonna get this registered. But I would definitely advise that you at least engage someone first to do the initial kind of research prior to engaging them to do the actual filing.
So, Casey, you've shared a wealth of information with us today, and I know that some people's heads are probably reeling because, oh my goodness, I have to go back and listen again.
I don't have a strong name.
I need to rethink my name. Well, you've given all of us a lot to think about, but if people want to continue to reach out and connect with you, how can they do that?
So I'm on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, all at Handy Smith ESQ. I also have my website, chandylaw.com. It's down right now, but you can still connect with me on there. You can get all of my contact information in social media handles. And I also have a blog called Handy Business Tips.
It's amazing.
It is.
Amazing. Absolutely.
I'm glad you guys actually read it. And like it.
It's amazing. I didn't think about that.
So that's kind of a kind of quick way, like if you just want to get some general information, and please reach out, leave comments, let me know what kind of topics, because I don't get to write on there as frequently as I would like to, because I do enjoy writing. But if you connect with me on social and be like, hey, can you talk about some of these things, so I'd make sure to blog about them.
Okay, so our Business Breakfast Talk Show participants, if you will, make sure that you reach out to Casey Handy Smith. She has dropped just a lot of nuggets on us today, all of the knowledge. But we are going to be back with you all next week right here on the Business Breakfast Talk Show. And if you missed any part of our show, you can always visit the Business Breakfast Talk Show page or the Synergy Radio Network. And we want to make sure that you catch that replay. So don't forget to share.
And until next Saturday, breakfast has been served.
Yes.
You're listening to Synergy Radio 1480.